The car engine would not start. David didn't want to figure out the cause of such a sudden breakdown. There was neither energy nor time for that today. The idea of leaving the car right in the parking lot near the office until tomorrow seemed to him to be the only right decision. It had been a tough day. At first, there were 2 troubled patients, and then his boss invited him to a negotiation with entrepreneurs. David managed to prove his point, but nevertheless, he still had an unpleasant feeling after another conversation with these unpleasant people. They were interested in this building, this 19th century architectural masterpiece that had miraculously survived in the central part of the city. The small 2-story building with columns belonged to a well-known professor of medicine, and it was very dear to David. After all, he was a psychotherapist. He cherished traditions and respected all medical professionals. A few years ago, he miraculously managed to buy this building. While the exterior was completely untouched, the new owner only restored the plaster of the facade. The interior renovation required a lot of money, but he didn't dare to change the majestic style of the building. The peaceful energy of this building encouraged patients to speak frankly. It seemed that even the time slowed down or completely stopped here. David was a talented professional and quickly became a popular psychotherapist. So far, he handled all his activities with the help of only one assistant, but his main idea was ambitious. He wanted to establish his own school, train his students, and open a psychotherapy center. Gradually, huge high-rise office buildings made of glass and concrete appeared all around. The small ancient building was becoming a problem for the real estate developers, but David refused to sell it. He was happy here. Gradually, he managed to pay off the loans, and in 3 more years, he managed to build his own house on the outskirts of the city. David carefully designed everything, including 3 rooms for children, but his wife Amelia didn't want to have children yet. First, she wanted to finish her studies at the university. However, she didn't work a single day in her specialty, explaining that she had realized too late that this profession didn't suit her. Then she spent a long time looking for something she would like, taking various courses and useless coaching programs. It seemed that she tried herself in all fields, art, business, and religion. Sometimes Amelia and her friends traveled to different countries. David didn't mind because he felt sorry for his wife, who couldn't find her way. He was lucky, he was busy doing what he loved. But as time went on, Amelia became more and more distant from him. In the past, they used to cuddle by the fireplace and talk for hours about life, about their future, about the world, but now such topics irritated her. Her gestures no longer expressed love. Now Amelia left the house early in the morning and only came back late at night. She was indifferent to him. When David asked her where she was and what she was doing, Amelia irritably stated that he gave her no freedom at all and she had no opportunity for self-development. The man realized their marriage was at risk, but Amelia ignored any attempts to fix the relationship. No one knows how long it could have lasted, but 6 months ago a terrible tragedy happened to David's friends. They died in a car accident. Their 3-year-old son, Tom, was left all alone. The guardianship authorities took him away, but sentimental David was not indifferent to the child's fate. He often visited the boy. David felt very sad when he saw him running towards him and hugging his niece. So David decided to adopt the boy. He just couldn't do otherwise. David sincerely hoped this new stage in their lives would bring him and Amelia closer together. Amelia took the adoption without any joy, but she didn't mind either. But the boy made her nervous. The boy was very active and talkative, and this annoyed Amelia. A month later, she said that she had no time to take care of the child because she had other things to do. So now only David was taking care of the boy. He didn't complain, but the only thing that upset him was his wife's total lack of compassion and unwillingness to be a mother. It was a breaking point in their marriage. There was nothing left to save. Soon, David accidentally found out where Amelia was spending her time. While driving by the hotel, he noticed his wife going inside with some man. Amelia didn't even try to justify herself and instantly agreed to the divorce. It seemed that she even felt some kind of relief. She explained in a calm voice that she and David had been strangers for a long time and that she didn't need a man with other people's problems. It was painful for David to hear that. From the first day they met, he loved his wife madly, but he remained the same as before, while Amelia became a completely different person. But is it wrong to take care of someone besides yourself? So, David and Tom were left alone. Their elderly neighbor helped David with the boy sometimes, but it was very hard for her to cope with such an active child. It was impossible to cope without a nanny. The man began to trust the smiling Meredith from the first day. David caught himself thinking that he was even a little afraid of her. Surprisingly, even such a fidgety child as Tom obeyed her in everything. After the divorce, the man felt total loneliness and longing. Memories were hurting his soul. Only his favorite job and his son saved him from depression. Trying to break free from the regret of a broken marriage, he began to pay attention to other girls. So, a gorgeous blonde girl, Elizabeth, came into David's life. He accidentally met her in a supermarket. It seemed to David for a while that this girl was exactly what he needed. She always fulfilled any of his requests and was always ready to help him, but always demanded something in return. For example, David had to give her a ring or a bracelet for babysitting Tom on weekends, or a new dress for cooking dinner. "I tried so hard. Don't I deserve a little gift?" she whispered to David in a sweet voice as she insisted on buying another expensive dress or jewelry. It seemed to David that he had hired her as a nanny or a maid. Such a strange relationship did not suit him at all, so Elizabeth disappeared from his life as quickly as she had come into it. The man looked at young women but didn't see in them the sincerity and self-sacrifice which he needed. It only happens in youth that absolutely different people can be together out of curiosity for something new, but when you already have life experience, you need someone to feel happy and comfortable with. David closed the door of his car and decided to walk through the park to the bus stop. There were children skateboarding near the fountain, a noisy group of people listening to some popular song, and a couple sitting on the benches at the end of the alley. An elderly woman was sitting alone, leaning forward and covering her face with her hands. It was not clear whether she was crying or just not feeling well. She was dressed very poorly. David could not pass by. What if this woman needed help? He approached her, bent down, and asked, "Are you okay? Do you need any help?" The woman looked at him. She was crying. The woman's face suddenly seemed very familiar to David. He immediately recognized those kind, bright eyes that often looked at him stonily many years ago. "Vivian, hello," the man greeted sincerely. The woman froze, looking confusedly at the stranger and shrugging her shoulders slightly. "It's me, David. Don't you recognize me?" The teacher smiled, trying to wipe away her tears with a handkerchief so as not to look pathetic in the eyes of her former student. "My goodness, David. Is it really you? You look so grown up." She shook her head. "How are you doing? Have you graduated from university? Where are you working now?" The man smiled and sat down next to her, telling her about his life. He was grateful to Vivian for everything she had done for him in high school. She always put a lot of effort into guiding teenagers with troubled personalities on the right path. David fiercely tried to resist the instructions of a strict teacher, but still, he often had to admit she was right. Thanks to Vivian, David left bad company and started to study diligently. Then she encouraged him to go to medical school and stayed after classes to help him prepare for the exams. Only after a while did David fully realize and appreciate all her help. They laughed, remembering funny incidents from their school life. Then David finally realized why he had approached her and asked seriously, "Vivian, so what happened? Why are you sitting here?" The woman sighed heavily, remembering the reason for her bad mood, but then decided to tell him everything. "I've had a lot of trouble in a short period of time. First, the new principal of our school forced me to retire. Then, the doctors diagnosed me with a terminal illness. But what worries me the most is my daughter. Her rich husband recently left her and took my granddaughter, Kate, away. Christina is suffering badly. She doesn't want to live, she just lies on her bed and stares at the ceiling all day long. The man immediately offered, without hesitation, Vivian, I know many talented doctors. Let them give you another checkup, and I can help you with your daughter too, it's my profession. But the woman only shook her head in response. Thank you, my dear, but nothing can help me. But I'd be happy to bring Christina to you, except that she doesn't want to talk to psychologists. Vivian fell silent for a moment and suddenly touched David's arm and said, David, let's come up with some clever plan. For example, you could hire her as a maid. I'll talk her into it. You're charismatic, people trust you, so just by communicating with her, you'll help her. The woman looked hopefully into his eyes, and he simply couldn't refuse her. The next day, a petite, pretty girl came to his house. Dark hair framed her pale face, there was sadness in her big gray eyes. Hello, she said in a pleasant voice. I'm Christina. My mom said you need a maid urgently. Meredith came out of the nursery, looked at the girl unhappily, and said, David, why didn't you say you needed a maid? I could take care of the child and do the housework. Meredith, you have enough work to do with the child, David replied. Tom looked at the guest with curiosity. He walked around her and looked intently into her eyes. Seeing the little one, the girl smiled sincerely. Hi, my name is Christina. What's yours? The boy suddenly felt embarrassed, which had never happened before. He lowered his gaze and replied, My name is Tom. It looked like Meredith suddenly felt jealous. She barked at the boy harshly, Tom, go to your room. Your daddy needs to talk to Christina. Tom looked sadly at his new friend, but obediently followed the nanny into the nursery. Christina turned out to be very neat and smart, and she got to work right away. Even though she had agreed to help her mother's friend only for a short period of time, she liked the change of scenery. At home, she was already starting to lose her mind, constantly thinking about the events of the last few months. She met her ex-husband, Sebastian, when she was still a high school student. The 17-year-old girl charmed the young businessman with her personality and beautiful eyes. He was older than her by almost 14 years. A fancy car, a huge bouquet of flowers, and an expensive gift charmed the young girl. Her friends envied Christina and gave her advice, do not miss your happiness, Christina. You'll never meet a man like that again. Vivian didn't like Christina's rich boyfriend, but seeing Christina's happy eyes, she didn't dare to stop her daughter from marrying him. After getting married, Christina was really happy for the first few years. She enjoyed taking care of her husband. Then Kate was born, and the young woman was completely immersed in the care of the baby. The baby became the greatest happiness for her and the meaning of her life. Christina never entered the university to get an education. Her husband kept saying that she didn't need education because she already had everything she needed. The only hobby for Christina was cooking and baking. Since childhood, her mother had taught her some recipes. Intelligence and creativity eventually helped her to create real masterpieces in the kitchen. If the girl made a cake, it always had some unusual decorations. A cozy, clean house, delicious food, and a well-managed child must have become boring to Sebastian over time, seeming like something ordinary and unexciting. Now, he was in no hurry to go to his family after work. He told Christina that in the modern business world, it was better to negotiate and sign contracts in the evening, in a restaurant or a nightclub. He almost didn't communicate with Kate. Kate was used to the fact that her daddy was busy all the time, and it was not allowed to bother him. Sometimes Christina smelled the odor of female perfume on her husband's shirts, but he would quickly find an excuse. He had danced with the banker's wife at another informal meeting. A doubt about her husband's fidelity settled deep in Christina's soul, but she tried not to think about it. Soon, Sebastian became a complete stranger to her. He was annoyed with both Christina and little Kate. Christina's friends were telling her, now what did you expect? He's having a midlife crisis. Be patient. But she didn't have to be patient for long. One day, he came home early, sat across from Christina, and said, I need a divorce. Christina stared at him, unable to utter a word. Divorce? She finally asked. Yes, I've fallen in love with another woman. Pack your belongings. I'm taking you to your mom's house right now. Suddenly, the girl came to her senses and began to speak indignantly. Right now? It's already evening. Kate has lots of clothes and books. We won't have time to pack, she exclaimed. Kate will stay to live with me, Sebastian muttered in an indifferent voice. Christina felt dizzy. She realized that her husband was not joking. Out of helplessness, she cried loudly, begging him, Look, I'll leave right now, but let me take my daughter with me. My daughter will stay here, he said firmly. Christina was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She realized that his money would solve any issues. He always achieved his goals by any means. I will not go anywhere without her, she shouted. Don't take her away from me, please, she begged, but he only pushed his wife away and left the room. Christina rushed to the nursery on the second floor, but the door was locked, and Sebastian was standing beside it with the key in his hand. Don't be stupid, Kate's cries could be heard from behind the door. Open the door. Mommy, Mommy, she screamed. Christina felt like her soul was about to be torn to pieces. Do you want her to cry, or are you going to have mercy on her and leave peacefully? You know it's going to be the way I want, Sebastian said in a calm voice. Christina knew it. She silently packed a small bag and left that house forever, leaving the biggest part of her soul there. Her life had become empty. She didn't see the meaning in anything anymore. During the divorce process, it turned out that Sebastian had taken care of his property in advance. All the papers were made in such a way that he would not share his property with his ex-wife. However, Christina didn't care about his money at all. She had no money, no housing, no education, and no job. Therefore, the court decided that Kate would live with her father. Her lawyer only indifferently shrugged his shoulders and said, I warned that such an outcome was possible. I'm sorry. In the courtroom, Christina saw her ex-husband's new girlfriend for the first time. She was a very young girl, about 20 years old. She had long legs, a very short skirt, large breasts, and a pretty face. Christina didn't feel any hatred for her. She even felt a little sorry for her. Most likely, in about 10 years, or maybe sooner, Sebastian will find another young girlfriend and kick her out. Eventually, that pretty girl will be left with nothing, just like Christina. The worst part was that Sebastian wouldn't even let Christina see Kate. The separation seemed like an eternity to Christina. She hadn't seen her little girl for so long, didn't hear her ringing voice, and she didn't know anything about Kate's life. That's why the unexpected opportunity to get away from her sad thoughts made Christina happy. The work was not difficult for her. In fact, it was exactly what she had been doing every day for many years of married life. She got up early in the morning so that she could get to her new workplace in time to make pancakes with sweet sauce for the owner of the house and his son. Tom and David enjoyed the food Christina had cooked. David had a sweet tooth before, but while he was married to Amelia, he had tolerated the tasteless healthy food his wife enjoyed. Therefore, such unexpectedly delicious food seemed simply wonderful to him. Christina was pleased to see such a reaction to her efforts. In the past, this kind of breakfast was something she often cooked for her family. Kate loved these pancakes, and Tom liked them too. The young woman stroked the boy's head fondly. Christina liked everything about this house. It was very cozy and warm. Even the mischievous boy with his pranks didn't destroy this atmosphere but, on the contrary, filled it with his energy. Soon, Meredith showed up. She grumbled grudgingly, "There's cereal in the kitchen. You could just serve it with milk. Why are you bothering with your cooking skills?" Meredith could not calm down. David left for work, and Christina started cleaning the kitchen. "Would you like me to cook for you too?" she offered, trying to make friends with the disgruntled nanny. But Meredith only glared at Christina with an evil smirk. While David was at work, she could say absolutely anything to Christina. "Listen, why did you come here? Do you think you'll feed him, smile at him, and he'll marry you right away? Don't even think about it. Such rudeness shocked Christina, but she wasn't angry. Perhaps Meredith was very lonely and expected David to pay attention to her. With these thoughts, Christina went back to work. In the evening, David had a new reason for delight, a delicious dinner. The kitchen was sparkling with cleanliness. Tom followed Christina everywhere, no matter how much Meredith persuaded him to go back to his room. After a delicious dinner, David walked over to Christina, playfully got down on one knee, and kissed her hand. Christina, no words can express my admiration. You are very talented, his eyes expressed sincere admiration. But he immediately came to his senses, frowned, and said, but we're going to get so fat that we won't be able to walk through doors. Be careful with such delicious food. The girl laughed merrily. She is so pretty when she smiles, David thought. He is so cute when he jokes, Christina thought. David suddenly realized that he had promised Vivian to help Christina, but so far he had only enjoyed the delicious food. He started a conversation about life, told about his ex-wife and about Tom's adoption, and then asked her to tell him about herself, trying to get to the core of Christina's problem. The man's kind and sympathetic eyes, and his frankness, made Christina trust him. In a trembling voice, without hiding her emotions, Christina told him what was bothering her. A kind and caring woman won David's heart. He already considered her problems as his own. He wanted to immediately take revenge on her ex-husband. After listening to her, he dialed the phone number of a good lawyer. The lawyer asked about the situation in detail and promised to help. Christina was eternally grateful to David. He managed to convince her that her situation was not hopeless. The evening ended with a tea party and an excited discussion about a future reunion with Christina's daughter. Christina's condition was getting much better. She enjoyed talking to her new friend, and now, as it turned out, for savoring every morning. She happily rushed to work. There was nothing left of the past hopelessness and fatigue. She had time to do everything, to clean, to do laundry, to cook, and to take care of her new assistant, little Tom. Meredith was not happy about it, but apparently, she accepted the presence of a new person in the house. Vivian didn't know how to express her gratitude to her former student, because now her daughter was saved. Unable to cope with her emotions, she promised to pray for David for the rest of her life, but he only continued to insist that the woman should think about her health. Please, Vivian, let me take you to a doctor. My friend is a very talented doctor. He has saved so many lives. Vivian was so grateful to David that now she just agreed to everything he offered. If you think it makes sense, I'll go. Thank you, David. After the examination, David's friend Michael informed Vivian, yes, there is a neoplasm in the intestine, but I can say more precisely about it only after surgical intervention. By the way, the tests have not revealed any terminal disease. Vivian looked at the doctor incredulously. She had accepted her imminent death long ago and saw no other outcome to her illness. Christina and David struggled to persuade the woman to go to the hospital. The surgery was scheduled for next week. The next day after work, David decided to tell Christina the whole truth and apologized for the little deception for the sake of his former teacher. The girl didn't even get angry when it turned out that her new friend was actually a certified psychotherapist. The man breathed a sigh of relief. Now he could hope for mutual sympathy from the girl. But Christina suddenly asked David, "Do you know Meredith for a long time?" David was surprised at such an unexpected question. "No, why?" The girl shared her suspicions. "Today, I saw Meredith in your office. She was rifling through your papers. You must have forgotten to lock the safe." "Very strange," the man said and fell silent. He still remembered the day he met Meredith. He miraculously found a nanny incredibly quickly. Now he had to check everything urgently. David's fears were confirmed. Everything was in the safe except the ownership certificate for the office building. David decided not to do anything for now and to talk to Meredith in the morning. But the next day, Meredith did not come to work. David's assistant called and told him that some people had broken into his office and would not let anyone in. The man immediately understood everything. His building was illegally seized. David had seen many reports on TV about such incidents, but he had never heard anything about the return of seized property. He immediately went to the office and tried to argue with the guards at the entrance, but in vain. No one came out to talk to him. Standing in front of the locked door of the building that belonged to him, and unable to enter it, David struggled with the rage that seized him at that moment. He went to the police and filed a report. The police officers indifferently accepted his report and promised to call him back. When he left the police station, he realized there was no hope for a successful outcome. Christina waited anxiously for David's return. Yesterday's incident, which had continued in the morning, and the total uncertainty had been bothering her all day. She felt sorry for the man. She realized how hard it was to lose a favorite job that generated good income. The front door opened. Christina looked into his eyes and understood everything without words. He collapsed into a chair in exhaustion and closed his eyes tiredly. He felt lost and helpless. Christina knew that the man needed a short pause. She made his favorite coffee and silently placed the cup in front of him. That pleasant aroma and sympathetic look quickly brought the man to his senses. David looked at the girl. He couldn't imagine his life without Christina anymore, but he had to be honest with her. Christina, thank you for everything. You have helped me so much, and I am very grateful to you. But from now on, my life will be too complicated and unpredictable. Probably my son and I will have to learn to cope with everything on our own. The young woman looked at him with her beautiful gray eyes, took his hand, and squeezed it tightly. If you think I'm going to leave you alone in such a difficult situation, you're wrong, she said seriously. This phrase, which every man would like to hear in difficult circumstances, made David feel so good. He climbed up from the chair and hugged the girl tenderly. They stood for a long time, pressed against each other. Words were unnecessary now, everything was clear, they would get through everything together. Little Tom jumped up and down happily and hugged them too. Vivian was waiting for the future newlyweds with a big plate of delicious cookies. David laughed. Is your talent for cooking hereditary? He exclaimed as he hugged his future mother-in-law. Christina smiled, holding her fiancé's hand. Now she always felt serene and calm next to her beloved. Only the thoughts of her daughter kept her from finding complete happiness. They arrived at Vivian's house to pick up Kate's birth certificate. Despite David's troubles, they were not going to give up the battle for Kate. While Christina was going through the papers, Vivian took her future son-in-law into the kitchen. David, there's something I have to tell you, she said nervously. What's wrong? He asked, worried, expecting more trouble. Tomorrow I'm going to the hospital for surgery. If I don't come home again. David started to comfort the woman, but she interrupted him and continued. Don't argue, David. Anything can happen. Before the surgery, I want to tell you something. I never dared to tell the truth to my daughter, but you should know, Christina is not my biological daughter. Vivian told a very strange story that happened to her many years ago. On that fateful day, late at night, there was a knock at the door of the young teacher. There was a man standing on the doorstep with a 1-year-old baby in his arms. Vivian immediately noticed a wound near his temple, drops of blood running down his cheek, and the sleeve of his jacket was red. He nervously said that gangsters were chasing him and asked the woman to take care of the baby until morning. Vivian was very frightened, but she could not refuse. The baby was surprisingly calm, her huge eyes looking at the new, unknown environment around her. But neither in the morning nor the next day did anyone come for the girl. Vivian learned from the TV news that a famous entrepreneur and his wife had died that night under strange circumstances. She looked at the baby girl with compassion. In 2 days, the woman had become very attached to this calm baby who had managed to awaken the maternal instinct in Vivian. But Vivian had no choice, she went to the police. The girl was sent to an orphanage, but the young teacher visited her often. The girl recognized her and reached out to her with her little hands. The girl often had no relatives, so Vivian decided to adopt her. The child became the only joy in the teacher's life apart from her work. The woman made a decision that seemed right to her at the time, not to tell her daughter the truth. She didn't want Christina to be connected in any way with the criminal background of her parents. Vivian suddenly stopped talking and looked back. Christina was standing behind her. It wasn't hard to guess that she had heard everything. There was shock and confusion on her face. Vivian's eyes filled with tears, and she finally decided to break the long silence. "Sweetheart, forgive me. Forgive me for not telling you the truth earlier. I just wanted to protect you, but it turns out that I lied to you. I love you, my girl. You have always been and will always be my family." How would Christina react to her revelations? Would she understand that it was a white lie? David also remained silent, not daring to interfere. Fortunately, the unexpected news did not affect Christina's relationship with her mother. She had seen this woman with her kind smile leaning over her crib every day since she was a baby. Her affectionate embrace had protected and comforted her when any trouble happened. But now, her love for this woman who had saved her became even stronger. "Mommy, if it wasn't for you, maybe I wouldn't have survived. Thank you. You are the best mom," Christina cried and hugged Vivian. Those words were the most precious words for any mother. Vivian hugged her daughter tightly. "My sweet little girl, I love you so much." David could not control his emotions. He tried to calm everyone down, or rather, to calm down himself. Everything that was happening before his eyes reminded him of some movie. The woman finally dropped the heavy burden of silence that had tormented her for many years. In the small bag that Christina's biological father had left years ago, there were some baby clothes and an envelope. Vivian held it out to David. "Here it was in a bag," she said with a shrug. "I don't know what this is, maybe you can figure it out." The envelope contained a small key and a piece of paper with some numbers and signs on it. Surprisingly, David was familiar with the designations. "This is the number and cipher to the safe deposit box," he said immediately. The women were surprised. Could there still be something stored there? "It's possible," David replied. "It's easy to check. We'll go to the bank tomorrow and find out." The local bank really had such a safe deposit box. Christina was noticeably nervous. She did not remember her biological parents at all. The uncertainty really tormented the girl. What would it be, something bad or good? She was led into the vault, and David remained waiting for his fiancée in the lobby. After a while, Christina returned. The locker was empty, she informed him. Here, there was only this piece of paper. The man took the paper and smiled. "Well, this piece of paper might be very valuable," he said. The piece of paper contained a bank account number in Christina's name. It turned out that there were several $1,000,000. Vivian's surgery was successful. The couple visited her in the hospital and told her the latest news about the unexpected inheritance and the fact that the court had already set the day for the hearing. Vivian was genuinely happy for her daughter. She couldn't wait to see and hug her favorite granddaughter, maybe for the last time. Michael entered the hospital room and added one more reason to rejoice. The neoplasm turned out to be benign. It had been removed, and the woman would soon be able to live a normal life. Vivian didn't know how to express her gratitude. She prayed many sleepless nights for other people without any hope of getting a chance for herself, and then such a miracle happened. Christina hugged Michael, and the always serious doctor could not hold back his smile. David also did not hide his sincere joy. The day of the court hearing came. Christina was nervous. David supported her as best he could but realized that she would not be able to calm down. She entered the courtroom in a terrible condition. She remembered the previous court hearing, the stuffy air, the bored judge who had already prepared the necessary verdict in advance, and the angry look of her ex-husband, who hugged the waist of his new girlfriend. And suddenly, Christina breathed heavily, as if revived after a long coma. The woman rushed forward. She saw Kate sitting in one of the chairs. The little girl saw her mom and ran towards her too. The judge let Kate express her opinion. I want to live with my mom. I feel bad with my dad and my new mom. She's mean and doesn't love me, the girl informed. After her words, Sebastian frowned unhappily but remained silent. Maybe he realized that he could not control the child, or maybe his new girlfriend insisted that he give the child away. But surprisingly, her ex-husband didn't even try to fight for Kate. David held his fiancée's hand, realizing what an exciting moment it was for her. Finally, the judge announced her verdict: Kate will live with her mother from now on. A loud sigh of relief came out of Christina's chest. In euphoria, she hugged David and ran to her daughter. Now she'd never be separated from her little girl again. Christina tried to wake up her son for the second time that morning, but he didn't want to wake up. Tom, we have to go to kindergarten, she hugged the boy. He smiled softly at her and walked to the bathroom. Kate and David were already eating breakfast in the kitchen. They were laughing loudly. The woman liked this morning routine. It charged her with positive emotions for the whole day. Her days were busy now. For example, this morning she had an appointment with her doctor, although she already knew that everything was fine. The second trimester of her pregnancy was going well. Then she had to drive to work. A few months ago, she and Vivian opened their own pastry shop. The business turned out to be profitable but quite challenging. When Christina found out she was expecting a baby, her mom and her husband were overjoyed, and the kids jumped around her in excitement. Vivian and David insisted that now she should not work too hard and should only be busy working on new products, something she really loved to do. When David left for work, Christina would go into the kitchen and work on developing new culinary masterpieces. David stopped at the bank on the way and then headed to work. As he drove past the place where his office used to be, he felt a little sad. There were no old architectural monuments anymore, the one he loved so much, but there was no shopping center either. Everything the new owners had built had unexpectedly burned down twice. Now there was a burned building at the place where David was giving people hope for a bright future. Perhaps someone like David had decided to set it on fire. David drove out of the city. There were giant pine trees on either side of the road. All the unpleasant memories were gone. David loved this area. It gave him serenity and peace. Here was the right turn. The guards opened the gate and said hello to their boss. A huge sign stated, Psychological Support Center. Although the center had been opened just a month ago, there were already a lot of patients there. Former clients had made a great advertisement for it. When designing the building, David managed to implement all his wildest ideas. He could finally implement his own methods, which turned out to be very effective. In the doctor's office, a person is freed from all the anxieties that do not let them live in peace. Coming out of there into a magnificent pine forest and breathing in the calming forest aroma, people can continue to heal their own souls. Inner balance is crucial for a human being. Some people need to see a doctor to achieve it, while for others it is enough to have breakfast with their family and come to their favorite job to help others.